Wages, yes. And what's really challenging for us, our states require X amount of training that is impossible to get done in 2 days for certain for certain clients. So this is our challenge. We're trying to figure out a way to streamline it the best we can, but we have to do minimum things. Like for instance, some of our clients, our caregivers have to like study for a medication exam and do an in-person, they call it a practicum, where they go through pill bottles and learn how to do, Well, that takes time. That's a week, to get it. And by that time, usually most of them are gone.
Treading water is the same as drowning to people like you and me. You better start swimming. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Robb Green.
So today I'm very excited to talk about business brokers and serial entrepreneurs with Barry Mehring. To be honest with you, Barry, I feel like we're gonna have to cut this one off because I love talking about finance. I love talking about buying businesses. You're gonna probably get into a little bit of the emotional side and we'll try to figure out how people psychologically handle this. But Barry, you're a serial entrepreneur. You've got a couple of franchises you bought, which I've never purchased a franchise, so I can't wait to dive into that too. But you've got Right at Home and then you've got First Choice.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about each of those businesses that you own.
Yeah. Years back, I'd say even 20 years ago, I had this idea that I wanted to have like a mobile nursing thing where we'd buy an old, vehicle or ambulance or something, and then just kind of go around and do this kind of mobile nursing. And then I kind of put that on the back burner for a little bit. And then my dad used to fish with a guy quite a bit, and he's passed away now, but he bought into a Visiting Angels franchise. And so he's like, God, his name's Greg. Greg's getting in this, Visiting Angels thing. Like, God, I've been thinking about this forever. So I started doing a little research, and there were a couple of franchises that, in that world, I'm not a nurse or trained medically at all. So that one, I almost certainly had to get a franchise because I didn't know what I was doing. So I did some research. Right at Home was available, and there was another one out of San Francisco. I can't remember the name of it. I've seen that here in Phoenix, around the Phoenix area. I did my research, loved Right at Home, and I got into that. So, I mean, it's like any other deal. I mean, it's a franchise that you can still be a business owner and you still have financials and all that. You're kind of doing good, in a sense too. And I think we've all had personal stories where you've had a sick grandma or mom or somebody that you really felt could have probably used services like ours, having a caregiver in the home. So it's been great. I've been doing that 6 years now. I wish I was a little busier. I just came back. I came back from San Antonio. I flew in there on Sunday, and I'm part of a deal called a performance group. And I'm with 10 of my colleagues, and we all sign confidentiality agreements. And we go through the whole thing, and we dig into each other's businesses top to bottom. We meet in person twice a year. We pick where we want to go anywhere. We picked San Antonio this time. And my head's been spinning since Tuesday because I've got a lot of ideas I want to take back into the office and so forth. But it's a challenging business. I'm not going to lie. You're dealing with a lot of caregivers. I probably have, 45 caregivers, on my team right now.
And just to be clear, so this is caregivers that are going into someone's house. So they still live in their own residence.
Yes.
They're going into someone's house. Is this an ad hoc or is this on a schedule?
Always on a schedule.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have no brick and mortar other than I own an office building in Fargo. But we go into their homes and, so they've done surveys, and it's probably no big surprise that 90% of seniors would prefer to stay in their home.
Sure.
They don't want to go into a nursing home.
Sure.
To me, that's scary. And, some people like it. You get 3 squares and you've got some, whatever, some
social aspect.
Social aspect.
Sure.
And that is a big problem. Seniors do get lonely and so forth too. So, we just go into their homes. Depending on the licensing, we're probably more considered home care versus like home health care.
Got it.
So we do more like bathing, toileting, dressing, things like that. We do actually do active medication management, which does get into the little skilled nursing, but total schedules. Try to keep that same caregiver with the same client, forever, hopefully. But yes, very scheduled and very regimented.
In a business like that, we don't have a huge team here. We're more online. You're in the real world, real people.
Yes.
I would imagine getting great employees has got to be one of the biggest challenges.
It's been horrible. And that was a big thing. My team that I was just at kind of got on me a little bit because I probably talked about the same subject at our last meeting, They're like, why don't you do something? Fargo's a unique market, and I feel like maybe they're all a bit unique, but and listen, I love all colors, creeds, sizes, whatever. I could care less. If you have a good heart, I just want you to be a good caregiver, and stuff. We have a lot of new Americans that have moved to Fargo, and I think that cultural difference has made it challenging for us to kind of find. This is really, I wouldn't say mean, but it's true. I almost feel like they're paid mercenaries. They want to just kind of come in and take care. So to answer your question, we've had an extreme struggle finding good staff. I have 12 clients right now that are on a wait list. I can't find enough people.
Wow.
It's a chronic issue. And this world is very weird because every state has their own laws. Yeah. And I actually live right on the border of North Dakota and Minnesota, so I operate in both states. So we have to follow both laws. And it really, the training, the TB tests, the fingerprinting, all that time between you get them in on their interview to the time they get their first client, if that gets stretched out like a lot of times it does in our case to a week or two, they're already gone with a different job. Wow. They won't wait. They won't train. So it's a struggle. I have to, when I get back back to Fargo next week, I'm literally just going to dismantle everything and just kind of start over on our recruiting and everything because it's what we're doing right now is not working very well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of businesses have that same challenge right now of getting great employees, especially the hands-on types of businesses, because, a lot of times the economics don't allow for a very high-paying salary because you can't charge a ton of money to go into someone's home.
Yeah, we're limited to what we get paid.
Right, that's what I mean.
Right.
So the revenue side of it is kind of capped and limited.
It is.
And therefore, you're limited on how much you can pay the employees. And it's a mismatch, right, with what the labor pool is. And that's very, very difficult. Obviously, in a business like this, you can't go hire overseas. Like we end up hiring a lot of people overseas. You have to be hands-on in the location, and they have to be willing to put the work in.
Yeah, I guess until they can have robots, if Elon Musk, I'm a huge Elon Musk fan. So, I mean, till he builds a robot, that can take care of humans, that's great. But for now, when you say overseas, you can't hire them and keep them there. But I just signed up with a program and it takes about 3 years and I'm excited. I committed to 15 foreign employees this year in 24. And the countries kind of vary, sometimes they'll come here, come there. This one might be out of like Sri Lanka or something. So every year it's just a little different. This is such a fascinating program. And I don't know what visa, I can't remember what visa they get to come over on, but they have to commit a year of time with my company or they lose that visa. Okay. So they have an extreme motivation to work and work hard and just do their deal. Now they have to find their own housing and all that, but this was my first time hiring. I said I committed to 15 employees, so I'm super excited.
Is there, after the year then, if they have an option, can they stay for another year? Or
they can if they want, but I think they're free to go and do what they want at that point.
In the U.S.?
In the U.S.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think they don't get automatically sent back. They kind of earn some kind of a green card is the common term, but it's, something similar to that. Like a permanent residency.
Yeah, we've hired a few people that have had the green card. We've done with the student visas. I feel like that's a viable path.
To me, it's like the only thing. I feel like we're stuck a little bit in a rut in Fargo. We have 2 major hospital chains there. We have a lot of nursing homes and stuff. They suck up all the good CNAs, basically, and that's our level of care, kind of going up to the CNA level. But I do have an RN and an LPN that work for me too, and they do the supervision. But it's really hard, and they want over $20. We're $16 to $18. That's all we can afford. So it's just a struggle when they come in, and that's the first thing they ask, how much money they make and whatever. We try to pass because they are not going to be a good caregiver.
Yeah, you've got to try to sell autonomy.
You don't have 8 residents that you're taking care of. It's not as structured as a hospital. We try to push all that. A flexible schedule. Yeah. We do all the same stuff. It works sometimes it doesn't.
I want to dig into the performance group.
Yep.
So I have a similar group that I'm part of that I co-founded. So we started 7 years ago. We have currently 11 permanent members in our group. It's called No BS Mastermind.
Yep.
We get together 3 times a year. We've done them all over the world, but now we do them in Scottsdale because 3 of us live here. That helps. So we just had ours a couple weeks ago. And one thing that we've done, and I assume everybody pays dues or something like that.
Kind of, yeah. Corp pays for some, but we pay our own way to get there. You know what I mean, and stuff. So it's kind of a partnership with corporate. So.
And what do you mean corporate?
So corporate right at home, they're very much involved with this. And so like for instance, Right now, our budget is about $6,000 a meeting that corporate will pay. Yes.
Okay.
So that'll fly a corporate employee who's kind of our coach.
Okay.
It'll pay for his travel and it'll pay for the meeting room and usually one dinner.
And do you guys do like a hotel or something?
Yeah. We always typically meet at a hotel. And so they cover, so it's probably similar to you, but it's definitely a partnership with Right at Home because they've been able to prove that performance group members have a higher average unit volume than non-performance group members. So in their world, in their mind, and they're smart, they know it's a good investment to put that into the franchisees. It's a no-brainer. I have learned quite a bit. My revenue has gone up somewhat significantly. I was a little flat now from 22 to 23. I mean, I'll get back to that part. In our world, people pass away a lot, you know what I mean, or whatever. So we're continually probably having to maybe 20% new clients just to break even from the year prior. Because they move on to nursing homes, they pass away, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We just don't have a super steady, deal.
I used to work in medical, so there's an evolution of that care, right? So
Yes.
most people go from at home to assisted living to skilled nursing, a SNF, and then they go
memory cares,
post that.
So what we try to do, and this is part of our marketing pitch, is we can, and it's been proven, we can delay that time from being in your home to actually needing to go to a nursing home, for instance. Because we have a caregiver in the home, a lot of times it's just simple getting their medications on time and the right amounts, getting them to appointments, just being there. So just kind of watch for slip and falls and, if they tip over, whatever, just simple things. It's not rocket science. They don't necessarily need to go into a nursing home right away.
Awesome.
Yeah. So kind of getting this performance group, they kind of got on me a little bit last time because I've been stuck. We talked a little earlier about my hiring woes, and I'm just kind of stuck in a rut a little bit on this hiring thing. And they called me out on it. So
Love it.
Yeah, I'm literally going to go home and just dismantle the whole thing. It's just really fascinating. We are part of there's a group called Solvo, and they operate out of Columbia.
Okay.
And they work with a lot of Right at Home offices, and they'll do recruiting, scheduling, everything remotely. And they're in the same time zone to Central. It's just unbelievable. So our gal's name is Alexandra, and we include her in all of our teams meetings and things like that. So she's definitely one of the team. But she does all of our kind of initial applicant tracking. The applicants come in, does the phone screening, just kind of gets them ready, and then hands them off to an in-person interview for us in Fargo, basically.
Wow, that's great.
It is. So I'm wondering now if that's the issue. I feel like we're getting enough people into the office, and then I think we're dropping the ball once they get into the office. I think it's that time stretch I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
These caregivers have probably already applied to a dozen jobs.
So you got to get them in and get them rolling. Right?
They have to be in shift within a day or two, or you're going to lose them.
Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Especially if you're getting a challenge from a wage perspective.
Wages, yes. And what's really challenging for us, our states require X amount of training that is impossible to get done in 2 days for certain for certain clients. So this is our challenge. We're trying to figure out a way to streamline it the best we can, but we have to do minimum things. Like, for instance, some of our clients, our caregivers have to study for a medication exam and do an in-person, they call it a practicum, where they go through pill bottles and learn how to do. Yeah. Well, that takes time. That's a week, to get it. And by that time, usually most of them are gone.
That is a tough challenge.
It's just so frustrating.
I have not heard. So give us an idea of the scope. Like Right at Home, are they big? Are
Huge.
there a lot of,
This is $1 billion company.
Wow.
Yeah.
So any idea how many franchises?
600, I think
600?
now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're worldwide, huge.
I have not heard of a big company, even especially a franchise, having their own. I call it a mastermind. A performance group sounds like a mastermind, and then funding it. That is an absolute no-brainer in my opinion. One of the best things I ever did was co-found ours. Because, and we do it a little bit differently. Well, there's no corporation to fund it. So
that helps.
We're all business owners, right? And we're all in the same vertical. We're all in e-commerce. Some of us have moved on. One guy sold his business for quite a bit, and now he's doing more real estate. But what the real value that I think that when we started it was that nobody makes any money off of ours. A lot of these guys do it for profit. So everybody contributes. We get a couple nice houses. We do fun activities. We get a chef. We make it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's nice. We've done Spain a couple times.
Yeah.
Driven supercars.
We haven't been overseas yet, but we can if we want.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
Yeah.
Everyone pays their own way, but we all contribute to the cost. and it's usually $1,500 to $2,000 for a few days.
Yeah, that's
each.
not bad.
Nothing.
That's
I mean,
reasonable.
for
Yeah.
business owners, not a lot of money. But the true value is that if you don't bring value, we ask you not to come anymore.
Yeah.
So everybody's motivated to stay in it. So everybody is a sharing, and we're all trusting. We're helping each other. So even though we're not operating the same exact model, they're similar enough models that we can all add value to each other. And I tell everybody, like, if you're not part of a group like that, you should do that because it's so much value. We do a piece of what we do as a board of directors.
Okay.
So you would give a presentation on the state of your current business.
Yeah, we do that.
What's working, what's not working,
Yeah.
and then we all give advice. And
Yeah.
I think you got a lot of good advice.
Very
it sounds
similar.
like.
Oh yeah, and we do it every time. But this one, they kind of got me pretty good. It's
Good.
and they called me out because I have been stuck in a rut, frankly, and I have too much overhead in the office. This not to get too much in the weeds, but in our office we rely a lot on government business. So we do a lot of North Dakota Medicaid, Minnesota Medicaid, and VA, and I don't have enough private pay, frankly.
Yeah.
And what's going on now, they call it EVV, electronic visit verification now. So you have to, and we have apps and all that stuff. So all our caregivers with geofences and, GPS, everything. So they know that you're at that client's location. You're not allowed to clock in or out unless you're, let's say, within 50 yards or whatever, 50 feet of that address. So that's how they verify it. Now, when you're there, they can't know if you did the bath and things. So you have to trust them to that certain point, but it's complex. So I have one way to bill in North Dakota. I have to have a full-time gal just doing my billing. I have one way to bill in Minnesota, and I have one way to bill for the VA. Yep. 3 separate, completely different systems. Private pay, it's easy. You have an ACH, they sign a contract. I don't know. I need to simplify and diversify that business in my office because what I have right now, it's hard business. I have to have certain people in the office. They're expensive for that. Yep. I need to simplify my client base a little bit to get to that.
Medical billing is an entire industry on its own.
Yeah, and that's basically what we're doing now. And I didn't really want to get in there. So we don't take Medicare.
Sure.
And that's a different thing. We take Medicaid, and that's for the poor. I mean, you basically have to be completely broke, to qualify for Medicaid. But they still have portals and things you got to go in, and
I worked
it's
in
a pain in the
medical.
butt.
I understand the challenges. I have a friend who started a PT, his own clinic. He was working at a big physical therapy place. And he went on his own, and that was a big focus for him. He's like, I'm going to go cash pay.
Yeah.
High-end cash pay, athletes and guys that can afford.
They're the best.
Entrepreneurs.
They're the best clients.
Best clients.
Yeah.
And he's like, I do some workman's comp still.
Yeah.
But that was the only.
That's okay.
He shifted significantly to the cash pay.
Yeah.
Because that was the client he wanted to work on. And now he's a solopreneur, and he's
so he can do that. So yeah, if I had a choice.
Yeah.
Now, all that being said, my reimbursement rate with the VA is almost 3 times as good as I can get for private. So, there's certain things that, hey, it's worth taking some things because the pay rates are so much higher. But again, then it comes with so much more expense too in the office to maintain it and get paid, basically.
Yeah, it sounds like you need to kind of break. I mean, you're an accountant, and kind of break it down to unit economics, right?
It is.
Each marginal client is the revenue is this, and my cost structure is this.
I know the margins of each of my client.
Perfect.
Yeah, so like I'm at 70% for VA.
Okay.
I'm about, and we try to. So our gross margin, I try to get 45 to 50%.
Okay.
Ideally. So on a really quick math, if I get $50, I can give a caregiver 25. Or if I give, so we try to keep that 50-50, and that gets you pretty darn close. I get,
We're talking per hour.
just per hour. So with my mix of business, I'm down in the upper 30s for Minnesota business. My private pay is right about 40%.
Okay.
And my North Dakota Medicaid is about 45.
Okay.
So between all of that, I'm running about 45% gross margin.
Okay.
And I'd love to bump that up just a little bit. And I'm probably due a price increase. I'm $32 an hour for private pay. And we're going to do, there's a company.
Seems inexpensive to me.
It could be.
Just my gut reaction, if I was hiring my mom or my mother-in-law, that seems very, very reasonable to me.
I got a name at this meeting. I was here this past week of a company that'll do a rate shop for me. And they'll do not only for the care, but what caregivers are getting paid. So I'm going to pay for that. It's cheap. It's really inexpensive. And then I think this is an interesting deal. We try to keep our rates about the same. So North Dakota raises them July 1st. And that's typically when we'll do a rate increase as well.
Okay.
Not that I couldn't do it ahead of time, and we might, but we've just kind of done it when the state does it. It's just ease of billing and things like that. But
It sounds like the biggest opportunity, though, is to generate more private pay at a higher rate.
yes,
Because then you take out all the expenses of the billing and all the nonsense.
correct.
And it's more straight cash flow. You don't have to worry about there's no delay in cash flow.
We
either.
bill weekly,
Perfect.
which is kind of nice. And we require ACH. If not, I require a 2-week deposit. So
Okay.
pretty much everybody just signs up for ACH.
I'm sure you probably have, because it's a big company and you performance group, but have you dug into the actual marketing? Has anybody figured out this marketing behind private pay? That seems like the opportunity.
It is. So up to this point, I've had this franchise now just a little over 6 years. And up to this point, I've never really felt I needed to have an outside marketer. They have different terms, a salesperson, a marketer, but somebody that's going to be doing your outside sales versus your inside sales.
Yep.
Inside sales are going to be, I've got Google ads all over the place. We've got a really professional team, obviously, with this $1 billion franchise. They build our website, so I get a lot of leads that way. The inside sales, that's a completely different training process. Typically, like with our care coordinator, she'll come in, take those calls in. We have an intake sheet. So yes, to answer your question, there is a structure and a method to the madness to get out rehab facilities, people, referral sources.
Yeah.
That's, we live and die off our referral sources.
Yeah.
So I used to do that. And just lately I've been getting busy and I've been doing other things. I haven't had a good presence probably in the public, almost 2 years now probably, which is not good. So I'm bringing a gal on April 1st.
Nice.
And there's a very structured thing and she's got great experience. I've been waiting for this gal. I know her. So I'm really excited to have her just focus on VA and private pay type business, referral sources. That's what we live off of. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I used to be a medical manufacturer rep for Medtronic years ago before I got started my own business, and you know, those reps know the people. Like if you could hire someone that used to be a rep, that's a great opportunity because they've got the relationships.
They do
at these referral sources, right?
Yep.
And they build the credibility and the trust. And I mean, I would assume it's such a unique position because if you've never, like my parents are not at that stage yet. And I have a little bit of experience in it, but if you've had no experience, it is a mess. Like trying to figure that out. Where do I put my parents? Where do they go?
You should hear these people call me. I mean,
they're just lost.
They don't know. Yeah, they're lost. Yeah. And by that time, they're already 2-3 months down the road where they should have called us before.
Now they're desperate.
Yeah, because now mom broke a hip or something. You know what I mean? They should have called us before, and we could have been there and likely avoided that. So this is a true statistic. It's usually the eldest daughter in a family that ends up taking care of mom or dad. Yeah. And so we deal a lot with the eldest daughter, not always, but it's amazing. It's true. We deal with a lot of oldest daughters. And we're just trying to think, hey, what is going to be the best thing? Mom or dad wants to stay at home. They don't know what we do. They don't know what it is. Our world is not paid by Medicare. So that's a common, we're not paid by Medicare, nor are we paid by health insurance, like private health insurance.
So let's take a step back for those that don't know. So Medicare is after you reach the age of 65, you're eligible for Medicare.
Yes.
Medicaid is a income restricted.
Yes, income based. Yep.
That is usually handed on a state by state basis.
It's administered by state, and every state is very different.
Whereas Medicare is on a national level, on a federal level.
Yep.
And so I'm assuming what happens is people are already older, they're over 65.
Yep.
And now they say, well, listen, Medicare doesn't cover this. I don't qualify for Medicaid.
Yeah, if you have more than $3,000 or something, it's terrible.
And then my private health insurance doesn't cover it also.
Doesn't cover it.
So now they're saying, what do I do here? What's my solution? And I got to figure out how to pay for this. Is that what happens with these people?
Almost always. Yeah. So they come in, you nailed it. All that stuff is not included. Medicare will, I think you got 2 weeks. So it'll pay for a little time in rehab, maybe a week or two, maybe a week or so with an occasional nurse visit at home, but that's it. They cut you off.
Yep.
So now all of a sudden they have nothing. And so they come to us and they go, well, how can we pay for this? And I say, well, if you have more than $3,000, you're not going to qualify for Medicaid. So let's figure this out. Private pay, like I said, we're at $32 an hour. We're probably going to have to bump that up $2-3 maybe this summer. Or if they're blessed, and we didn't talk about this, Rob, if you have a long-term care policy. Yep. Now, they're almost cost prohibitive now because every one of them has gone broke. And in that world, you can't just be broke. Either the government takes it over or it gets absorbed by another company like GE. has a bunch of these, billions of dollars in unpaid liabilities with these things because they didn't expect you to live past 70, back when they did this. They didn't expect the cost to quintuple or, tenfold, since they were.
So that's a long-term care for those.
So if they have long-term care, that's first thing we asked. Do you have long-term care insurance? And the older ones are kind of restricted to like nursing homes, but not always. Some of it will include in-home care a lot of times too. But if you're old, they'll have unlimited, amounts. You're like, hey man, you're golden. Yeah, it's like, we're thinking about getting rid of this policy. Like, are you kidding me? You've been paying into this thing for 30, 40 years. Don't drop it now. Yeah. Now's the time to get some money out of this thing, The more modern ones are probably limited to 100 to 120 bucks a day is what I've seen. And that can get us 3 to 4 hours of care, a day. Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
And it's not out of pocket.
No.
Yeah, I do think that a lot of those insurance companies have changed their pricing models.
Very much so. They're all broke. All the ones, those veterans are literally, they're broke. So the companies that took them over have had to absorb those losses, like GE, and now they've made new ones now that I think now if you go sign a long-term care policy, it's literally just prepaying for care that you're going to need in the future. It's a forced savings. Yes. That's exactly what it is. So you probably dollar for dollar will pay in exactly what you're probably going to take out in the future.
Which for a lot of people is a smart play because they're not going to do that on their own.
Yep.
They're not going to put the money. They underestimate the cost that we're talking about here. I mean, I think if you've never had experience with it, it's shocking how expensive it can be, especially when you get into some of these facilities. It's crazy.
Do you know what 24-hour care will run you about $25,000 a month?
Yeah. And most people don't know that.
No. And that's probably on the low end of the scale, you know? Yeah. So this is not a game for, you have to have a little bit of money to afford this on a grand scheme. No, we're not out to fleece our clients.
Sure.
So what we'll do is say, hey, well, yeah, we want a night shift. We want a day shift. I'm like, hey, can we save a little money? Maybe have one of your family members stay the night.
Yeah.
There's 12 hours or 8 hours or whatever the deal is. That'll save money. Can the son come in and maybe watch a couple hours for this? So we try to work with a family to have a comprehensive plan where maybe we're only in there for 3 or 4 or 5 hours a day. Usually in the critical times, they want to get up, the mornings are typically busier. The bathing, getting breakfast, kind of getting your pills set up for the day.
And then probably bedtime.
And bedtime would be the next thing.
Yeah.
And we can prep meals like early in the morning and just put them in the fridge for that day later. And if they can do the night, it's hard to do. And then we get into the split shift. It's hard to get a caregiver to do 2 hours here and 2 hours there. They like groups or blocks. So we try to get it all in one if you can, but sometimes we do have to do a night shift too to get them ready for bed.
This feels like a great educational opportunity in terms of marketing. I'm a marketing guy, so when I think about marketing, this feels perfectly situated to catching somebody at the right time and educating that son, daughter, in most cases, on how to think about this, almost like a framework, like a mental model around it. Like, hey, if this, then that, and then we go down that decision tree.
It's funny you say that. We have that on our website.
Okay.
We're trying to catch them early, just like what you said, because by the time we get them, a lot of times it's too late.
Yeah.
They're already having issues, or if they'd have gotten us early, we could have really saved them a lot of money too. So that's like a decision tree.
Yep.
Can they do this? Okay, yeah, stay here. Or can you do this? Do that. Will Medicare pay for it? No. And it kind of goes through this whole thing. And so we have education pieces. We revamped our website on a corporate basis, I think about a year ago.
Okay.
And so they've got all this great information in there. If people would just do it and download it, of course, then we get a notice that they've downloaded it, that I can call them and kind of do a sales call. But you're right. It's all education. I go on local TV sometimes in Fargo, kind of the local, home care expert there. And we'll talk about slip and falls and what you should do and nutrition and things like that. And I hope they listen. If we can catch them early, it's way better.
The other thing is probably there's a stigma around it, right? A lot of people don't want to talk about death. They don't want to talk about...
No, it's not fun.
It's not fun,
No.
right? So a lot of times they wait until the end. My uncle passed away recently, and I was thrust into kind of handling that situation. It was unexpected, and I had no idea. I had to figure it out. Like, I didn't know the police were involved, and I was like, it was a learning experience I got thrust into in a quick period of time. And so I was surprised at how much I didn't know.
Yeah, my father-in-law died. My mom's been dead quite a while. My dad's still alive. He's healthy and 82, but my father-in-law died about, I think it's almost 4 or 5 years ago now. And I just remember my brother-in-law having to deal with that. And he was really good. He put everything in trusts. He was dying of cancer, so he knew it was coming, organized everything. Even then, it was a lot of work because a lot of the places he had his money are reluctant to let it go.
Correct.
We really fought for that. I'm like, Here's his death certificate.
Yeah.
Here's his will.
Yep.
Here's the trust. Give us the money. Yeah, give us the money. Oh, no, and they'd make up all these excuses, I think, just to keep the money.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. There's part of it, maybe they don't want to get sued or something too, but yeah, these are conversations that need to happen early. They're not fun. They're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you have to have them. Every single one of us, Lord willing, if we live long enough, is probably going to need home care.
Yeah.
We're going to need it. And so why not try to I'm not necessarily advocating for a long-term care policy because they are expensive, but plan for something. You're going to need it. It's going to happen. It's inevitable.
Yeah, it does feel that way. And I think as much as I'm a fan of Musk and the robots that they're building, we are quite a ways off from those kind of activities.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with Musk. I think he'll hopefully figure something. I just read his biography.
Yeah,
if you haven't, it is just fascinating. And it's right through like mid 23. I mean, it's very current. And here's me complaining. I'm trying to run 2 or 3 companies and he's running 6. I'm just like, no, I think I can be okay. I'll figure this out.
I've seen their prototype of the humanoid robot 2 at a Tesla store recently. And it looks amazing.
Yeah, he wanted it to look human.
It looks amazing.
He didn't want it to look like some scary, android or something.
I mean, we're getting into science fiction, but it's getting closer and closer by the day. It feels like it's inevitable, but that dexterity, I saw the video where they did the egg. Like the robot
I saw that one. Yeah, isn't that amazing?
It's unbelievable where they're coming.
We need it though, Rob, because this is no secret. There's about 10 or 15,000 baby boomers, becoming every day.
Yeah.
We have a massive and chronic shortage of caregivers. There is no way demographically, because we're not having enough babies, and that's Elon's big deal. He's trying to single-handedly solve that himself. Exactly. Yeah. But we need more births. We do not have enough workers coming up that are going to take care of all these seniors. Yeah. So it's inevitable that we're going to have to go to technology in some form. But I don't think our world is ever going to go away because there's such a huge need and we have such a shortage of caregivers anyway. We're going to maybe have to work with the robots. I think there's still always going to have to be a human involved there somehow and caregivers and things. So I love it from a macroeconomic standpoint. Yeah. I can't imagine a better business in a need, maybe other than AI or the greatest thing now lately, but home care, I love it. Other than the challenges it brings, it's an amazing,
technology. It might take a while, but it'll get solved.
Absolutely. It has to be. We're going to leave these old people, laying in the streets or.
Yeah, the economics will solve that. It'll work itself out.
It has to work itself out.
It has to work itself. So this is let's take a pivot then, because you just touched on something really important about how many baby boomers are getting older, right?
Yep.
So you've got another business, which is a primary focus of you, which is business brokers, which is first choice.
Yep.
So I am interested in that a lot because we're actively looking to purchase.
It sounds like we have similar
backgrounds
in that area.
And what I find fascinating is you've got all of these people that are getting older and baby boomers, and then what I've learned and read is that so many of their kids don't want to take on their business.
You nailed it.
Now they've had a business for 30 or 40 years, and they want to get out of that business. And most people, I bought a few businesses, I've sold a few businesses. Most people do this once in their life. So now they don't really know what to do next. So let's talk about your other business, which is First Choice Business Brokers. That is also a franchise, is that correct?
It is, yes. They're out of Las Vegas. Yeah, it's crazy, and maybe we're not so dissimilar between the two with the baby boomer stuff, because that is our primary seller prospect. Probably in their 60s, 70s, had the business 30 to 40 years, either just wanting to retire or starting to have some health issues, and they just don't want to do it anymore. And you nailed it, Rob. It's the only reason they called us typically is because their kids don't want to take it over. Yeah. And I think they look and see what their parents have struggled with trying to get, employees. This labor shortage will get worse over time. I don't care. You read anything, it's going to get worse. And to me, I've seen it's industry agnostic. So from home care to owning an auto parts store that I'm going to get a listing here shortly, anything that deals with employees, especially like tech, like mechanics, car repair, they can't find construction. Yeah. They can't find employees. Plumbers, they can't find people. So they're looking to unload, and it's you nailed it. Those are probably our bread and butter listings. Is that exact profile that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, we just as a consumer, I know we typically will my wife will have a honey-do list for me, and I'm not that guy. So as soon as we get like a half day's worth of work or a day's worth of work, we have a handyman. We typically employee comes over and fixes all the stuff that's loose and not working right.
Yep.
it's hard to get a handyman here.
They're tough.
And it's expensive. Like, it's really expensive. They're difficult to get, and they're expensive because there's a shortage.
There's a shortage.
There's a lot of people that have this demand, but not a lot of supply. And I find, so what correct me where I'm wrong on this, but I love this side of the business, the buying and selling of it. So I've read and heard that 90% of businesses that go up for sale never actually sell.
I don't know if it's that bad, but it's a lot. And I know a lot of like other brokers will use that statistic in their marketing, because they want to get clients. I don't know if it's that bad, but some aren't saleable. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I have a lot of stinkers, and I'm not going to mention which one, but I know they're not going to sell.
Yeah.
And I took them on just because I was kind of new to this and I wanted to get some listings and so forth. I think it's part of that. And now as I get more experience and get more listings, I'm much choosier on the listings I have. I want to make sure they're saleable.
So let's talk about
that ratio, that would go way down.
Let's talk about business that is, what makes a business sellable and what makes a business unsellable to the marketplace.
Okay, just in general terms, I like manufacturing is really big, like business to business, even B2C, like HVAC, plumbing, electrical. Those are really hot right now. Even restaurants, believe it or not, are still good. Yeah, I mean, if they're profitable, people still have this desire. It's like to own a bar or a restaurant, and I don't know why. And I'll get back to Ty. I have a joke, so I'm going to go into consulting. I'm going to say, you're going to pay me $100,000, and you have to do exactly what I say. Say, don't do it.
Yeah.
I just saved you $500. You can thank me later because you're going to lose money, not 8 out of 10 times, on those deals. But at any rate, so profitability, our world is almost entirely historical EBITDA.
Yeah.
So if you have historical EBITDA, we take that and multiply it by usually 2 to 4x, roughly in my world. It's not perfect, but you're like, say 3x is pretty common. So if you don't have historical EBITDA and you're like, well, but I have a patent and I have this. Yeah, but patents are almost worth nothing now. They're all stolen from China. People, I wouldn't say they're worth nothing, but they're not like, hey, this patent, I spent $80,000, I'm going to get $80,000. You're probably going to get nothing for it because somebody's probably knocking it off somewhere, over in China or something. So are they an industry that people like? They think it's sustainable. A lot of people like hands-off businesses. They don't want to be the sole window washer.
Yeah.
See, maybe that window washer makes $200,000 a year.
But they're buying a job.
But they're buying a job, and they don't want to buy a job. So that answers your question. They want hands-off.
Yep.
They want historical cash flow, and they want, and it doesn't have to be super high. I mean, they have their limits. They might say, hey, I want something that makes $200,000 to $500,000 a year.
Yep.
And I'm willing to pay 3-4x for that.
Yep.
And so it's that challenge, finding those quote unquote quality companies that meet that mold. That one I'll sell for sure.
All right, so I'm going to give it a couple of terms here because you and I are finance guys.
Yes.
EBITDA is earnings before interest,
taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people talk about EBITDA, like finance guys. That's the number we use, but a lot of people use seller discretionary earnings.
That's another term we use.
As a substitute. So SDE is a substitute.
Yep.
How I always think about it, SDE is more EBITDA with add backs.
It is. It's 100%.
Okay, so seller discretionary earnings is how is a business going to operate moving forward? What can I expect it to make from a profitability standpoint moving forward? I just had this conversation with a friend this morning, right before you got here, and I was helping him. I looked at his financials for last year. We had this discussion, and he started going, this is what I find with most sellers. He started going, well, if I can't sell this for $1 million, I've already put 5 years into this. And I said, listen, take that out of your mind. I don't care if you worked on this for 100 years. Any business buyer would look at this and say, how much money can I make from it?
What's it say on your tax return?
What's it say on your tax return? And then not only that, but what opportunities can I take to improve that, right? You've got to have some meat on the bone.
That's my vernacular too. I say you got to leave a little meat on the bone for the buyer.
Because otherwise I'm buying a piece of real estate that I'm just going to rent out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get normal return. So when we're looking to acquire, we've been doing outreach for the last 6 months, just not even through brokers, just out finding these opportunities.
Well, I'm available, so you can call me anytime.
and finding people that are, what we find, and I've had dozens of these conversations myself in the past couple months, is that the mindset isn't right. Like the seller's mindset is like, they're associating it with non-financial reasons. Time they've put in.
Yeah, blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. I'm like, that's not how this works.
No.
And so I feel like I do a decent amount of education to people about that. I'm not a broker on it, but I'm like, hey, this is how it works. This is how they trade. I had a great one I wanted to buy a few months ago, and I'd still be interested in buying it, but He had told me it made $100,000 a year.
Yep.
We built the financials for him off of Amazon's reports. And I'm like, listen, it makes no money.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, what do you want to do from here? I'd still like to acquire it, but like it's a multiple of 0. So how do you want to do it?
Anything into 0 is 0.
Yeah. So we couldn't come to an agreement, but there's got to be a deal that can be made there, and maybe it's just a time thing. He's like, well, what if I get it to that level? You get it to that level, I'll buy it.
At that point, it's kind of considered an asset sale.
Yeah.
And that's what we would treat it as. So you nailed it. I mean, you nailed exactly what I do on a day-to-day basis in that world. So it's a lot of coaching. It's a lot of counseling. Like, I took $100,000 in cash, last year. And I said, listen, man, I'm not the IRS. I don't really care. But what's on your tax return is what a buyer is going to buy. And it's what a bank is going to lend. Yeah. Our world is SBA financing. That's probably 80% of our financing is SBA. Oh yeah, all SBA. And SBA goes 3 years prior tax returns.
Yep.
0 waiver on that. So if your income didn't flow through your tax return, you don't get that money. And what I tell them though, think of all the years you have enjoyed tax-free income. You've already enjoyed it all. I'm sorry, I cannot help you now with that. This is what it's worth.
So do you feel, what happens when they don't sell the businesses? So let's get someone's 70 years old, kids don't want it, and they talk to you and you give them a harsh dose of reality.
I have, and I've lost a lot of listings over that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's not going to sell anyway.
No, it's not going to sell anyway.
So what happens to those businesses? That's what I always think about is like, we're talking millions of businesses.
I think they just shut down.
That feels like an opportunity to a guy like me.
Yeah.
Like, how do we get somebody to like realize like the opportunity is what it is?
Yep.
And it's like the market dictates the price. I don't dictate the price. The market does. If no one's willing to pay you for something, it's not worth anything.
That to me is the definition of value.
Yeah.
That's what the market's willing to pay for it.
I wonder if
maybe you'd have some opportunistic buyers that all they do, maybe, and I don't know who this is, but maybe all they do. So say, for instance, I have, I'm not going to say, I'll just say they're like an auto salvage.
Okay.
A lot of cash in that business. Say what you want or whatever. And I'm not the IRS, so I don't really care. But I know there's a lot of cash going on. Sure. So when they go try to sell their business, they're like, well, God, I clear, $1 million a year. Yeah. Well, it says you make 100. So I could only sell this for say $300,000. But I make $1 million. Well, again, start reporting it. And that's a very inventory heavy business. So this is an interesting concept too, and we haven't touched on this. Things have evolved a little bit of what is included in a sale price. So let's say a company's EBITDA is $100,000 and we can get $300,000 for that. Typically, you're expected to get like a normal quote unquote amount of inventory, working capital, and a normal amount of equipment, things that derived that annual $100,000 income. Right. You don't get extra for that because it was what made the 100.
You needed to build the business.
You got it. Now, but maybe you have another $1 million in inventory sitting out there that you don't need. Well, you can get extra for that, and you should. And if a buyer isn't willing to pay for that, and I'm dealing with that situation right now, the seller has to be willing to sell it. And that way on their own. And then that's how they get their price they want. You know what I mean? So you just have to be very creative to get the seller to where they want to be. And a lot of times, a lot of seller carry is required now. Yeah. The SBA almost now will require their typical deal, 10% down, 10% carry from the seller.
Let's describe seller carry for people.
So seller carry would be just like, so let's say we have $1 million sale price. Yep. The seller would be required to hold back basically $100,000. So
they don't get the 100.
They don't get the 100. But they still, it's not ownership, but it's in the form of a true note.
Perfect.
So the buyer would get 100% of that, but now the seller is in a second position typically to the bank. And what they do, especially in the SBA, for that to qualify as equity, they cannot get any form of payment for up to 2 to 3 years, depending on the bank. Then after, say, that 3-year period, then you can start earning interest and amortize it. Okay. So I spin it to the seller too. I'm like, hey, you can typically defer your tax because of that. So that's a benefit. And you can typically get your ask price. So you know this in your business that you're dealing with, cash is king. You come in and write a check and you're going to get a little bit of a discount. If you have a loan, seller carry, all this other stuff, well, you're going to be expected to pay more. So that's how I sell it to my sellers and say, hey, if you're in no big hurry, I can get your ask price, but you're going to have to carry a little bit of that.
As a buyer, I give 2 options.
Yep.
I give one option that's cash. I give another option that's more money with deferred consideration.
There you go.
That's how I
You nailed
structure
it.
every
Yeah.
deal.
That's how they go.
Because it's 2 different ways I think about it. One is more cash up front. One is less cash up front, and I'll pay you over time. That's how money works. It's called the time value of money.
Time value of money.
And
Yeah, that's
we all
exactly
learn
right.
this in finance.
Yeah, we all, that's the basic deal. And sometimes it's hard to get that through a seller's head sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, they'll think, hey, my business is this, I'm not going to hold any money, I want to get out. It's a counseling thing again. It's just trying to educate. It's an education piece because they just don't understand it. You know, they've been very successful at what they do, and a lot of times they don't even know why. It's just good customer service they've done, you know?
I've helped a ton of friends sell just as a friend, not as a consultant or anything like that. And it's fascinating because I think there's an asymmetric knowledge of what we know. Like you and I are able to talk about this pretty comfortably, right?
Yeah.
The first person going in, especially if they're not financially savvy, this is like a whole new language for them, right? You start talking about, initial consideration, deferred consideration,
Yep.
Seller notes, seller carryback, SBA loans. And I would advise everybody that is looking to sell or buy a business, get some type of advice. Get somebody who's done this, been there, done that, whether it's a broker, whether it's someone that's a friend. If you've got a friend that knows it, I mean, I've had quite a few calls about that to just like get them up to speed so they can have an intelligent conversation with somebody.
I think for me too, we're not the cheapest out there because we provide a premium service, but in my opinion, it's worth it.
How do you charge?
Commission.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all commission based. So we tend to be a little bit more than maybe say your residential broker,
Okay.
but our world is
10
very,
15?
we're 10 to 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I'm 10, I'm 12 and a half to 10%. That's my deal. So you nailed it. So, but our world is very different. We're very confidential. We have a 2-part process. I don't just get a listing and throw it out in the MLS and say, okay, some other broker find it. All our ads are very cryptic. It'll say successful dental practice, Phoenix. Now, Phoenix is huge. If even I said it in a neighborhood, they wouldn't be able to figure it out.
Right.
But if I said South Fargo dentist for 50 years, they might be able to figure that out.
Sure.
So I have to be careful when I'm wording my ads not to give it away too much, but still leave it as a teaser for the buyer to come in and say, hey, I'm still pretty excited about this. We have a very robust, we have a ton of forums, and I was a little reluctant to get into a franchise, but I'm happy now because the forums are just amazing.
You've already got a pre-built process.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And I had the experience and I had all that. I'm like, I don't want to do this because you have to pay 10% royalty and all your stuff, but I'm glad I did. And it's huge. But one of them is the NDA, and the NDA is rock solid.
Okay.
So every buyer prospect has to sign this NDA. We go through a vetting process.
Non-disclosure agreement.
Non-disclosure agreement, sorry. Yeah, that's the vernacular. I forget. Yeah, that's non-disclosure agreement. And it basically says you can't repeat any of this information. You can't disclose any confidential information. You can't go around me, because I introduced you to the buyer or to the seller, excuse me. So it kind of helps us both. And then what it does in there, it puts in how much money they have to invest, where they're from. And I, without exception, call every buyer. I vet them. I make sure they have to show me proof of funds. They say they got $100,000. I want to see a bank statement. Now, am I forensics accountant? If they lie to me I'm not going to necessarily know all that, but I make them show me a bank statement, and I like to leave their name on it. But if you can cross out your account number, I could care less,
Right.
And then I just make sure it's a good fit for them. And I don't mean this in a weird discriminatory way, but I mean, if this is a business that's hands-on and they want a completely hands-off business, I'm just going to recommend it's not a good fit, because why am I going to release confidential information from my client that I have to keep stuff confidential to a buyer that I have almost zero chance as a good fit?
I think that's great.
So we go through, this is why you pay a little extra. I take care of all of that. Run your business. Don't worry about all these tire kickers and your time wasted. And I almost can guarantee you we're going to negotiate better than you can on your own to get a higher price.
In one thing that some people look at, you brought this up, but MLS and like a realtor, the difference I think in businesses is that houses are similar. No business is exactly the same as every other business. So you need more of this hand holding, more of this marketing, which I feel, this is obvious to me. I think you should, if you don't know what you're doing, you need to pay somebody to do this.
Yeah.
Because you're going to
hire
get
a professional. This is what we do. Yes.
Nothing against realtors. But in today's day and age, when I bought my last house 6 years ago, I knew the neighborhood as well as a realtor. I knew what I wanted to buy. They opened the doors, and I told them what I wanted to pay.
That's so frustrating. And that's the reason, Rob, that's the reason I got my brokerage license in the first place. My dad was a pretty large hotel developer in the 80s and the 90s, and I was helping him on the development side. And I'm very organized being a CPA, and stuff. I would be doing all the work, and then they get half the commission.
Yeah.
And these are like $200,000-$300,000 commissions. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm doing everything. They don't even know what they're doing half the time. So that's the reason I got into this in the first place.
And there's nuances in this space because it's fascinating. So we operate in the e-commerce space, and we bought some and we sold some businesses. And in the e-commerce space, when financial guys come in that are used to offline, they're exactly what we need working capital, we need inventory because the business operates in inventory. In e-commerce, it's a multiple plus inventory.
Yep.
Every situation. It's an extra, but then that gets factored into the multiple.
It's just the way it
is. So
yeah.
Understanding the nuance of it and how to discuss this, and I'm not.
In your industry, a lot of times can even be based off revenue.
Yeah.
And I do have a couple listings coming on, and I've had to get special appraisals basically done on them. It's a revenue multiple, not an EBITDA multiple.
Yeah.
And so it's just a different game.
Yeah, and knowing that nuance, whatever industry you're in, unless you're in it, like really in it, you don't know how to sell a business in your space. It's a completely different. I don't go try to be a doctor on the weekends. I mean,
Are you gonna do your own appendectomy?
Yeah, I do more research than I should, but I want to know what's happening. But I think in this time and age, you've got to really have experts on your side, and you've got to be able to find somebody that it is a good fit for, right? As a buyer, I'm looking for something that I can make an immediate impact to. That isn't how I think about it. Is our skills on the team. They don't have those skills, and the seller doesn't. So can we buy that, and can we apply our skills and get an improvement in the business?
Yep.
If there isn't that, I don't want to buy it.
Yep.
Because otherwise I'm just buying cash flow that may or may not continue.
Yeah, and it's at risk. And you kind of bring up this experts. We have to be careful as brokers because we are not attorneys. Sure. And even though I am a CPA, I'm not their CPA.
Yeah.
So I'm very cautious about giving any legal advice. Arizona's a weird state. We can legally write contracts, which is weird. Yeah, but that's not normal. So I just recommend using the forms, the prepaid or the pre-printed forms. But when we get in our industry, especially in business brokerage, it's so specialized. You'll get a CPA or an attorney that's trying to learn this industry on your back, and your dime, your seller's back, your seller's dime. So say they've had an attorney for years that's typed up a thing and this and that. They don't know anything about a business broker deal. I will recommend to that seller, please, I've got a list of them. This guy or gal only deals in business broker type settings. This attorney or this accountant only deals in business broker type settings. M&A type stuff. Yep. They get it. Don't let your 70-year-old accountant, and don't get me wrong, he's probably a good guy, that's done your tax returns for 50 years. He is not going to be the CPA for this deal. Yeah. I've got better professionals for that.
It's fascinating because even just the handful of deals I've done and helped friends with, I've learned so much in that small little things. Like I remember I was selling a business in 21 and they sent me the LOI and I said, do people actually sign this crappy LOI? It was so bad and so biased in their favor. Yeah. And they're like, 95% of people just sign it and send it back. And I was like, it's just lack of experience.
Yeah.
And like, you've got to be kidding me. I would never sign this. It was like a 9-day exclusivity.
Yeah, those are the exclusivities we advised our clients just not to do that.
It was
yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
And so that was one example. Another example was like the deferred consideration was based upon triggers.
And triggers are fine as long as they're easily measurable.
What they had done in e-commerce,
if not, it's terrible. Yeah.
And then I was like, well, wait a minute. The deferred consideration is based on your ability to operate this business, which you've shown no experience in doing. So basically, I'm giving you up the control. Yet I have to hope note that you guys can operate this business at 90% of what I did.
Yep.
I don't feel great about that. Now I'm putting it at risk, basically based on you guys.
A lot of those times, then you need to stay in somehow at a minimum as a paid consultant or something, and that happens a lot in our world too. Where if there is an earnout, we call it in our world, earnout. The sellers want to be there because what assurance do they have to get their $1 million extra in price if you aren't the one doing it? You know what I mean? And so a lot of them won't do it unless they can work in that business at a moderate wage. It doesn't have to be crazy.
Yeah, and so all of those, I would consider them little things. If you don't know them, can be catastrophic.
Yeah, it'll kill the deal. It'll kill the deal.
I have multiple friends that didn't do some of these things and missed out on millions of dollars in earnout millions of dollars in earnout because they just didn't understand the basics of the structure of the contract.
Sad.
And it's really sad. So I think on both sides, there's always an opportunity to really understand it. So,
And to me, that's a win-win. From a buyer standpoint, what do they care? They're going to make more money. The seller wants a higher price. This is how I gap that difference a lot on an earnout. Or maybe they don't want to sell their property and they just want to lease it to the buyer. Well, maybe we can make the lease a little higher. You know what I mean? There's ways that you can bridge that gap between, because sellers are always going to be high, buyers are always going to be low. What can I do as a broker to try to bridge that gap? And I really do try to make it a win-win, because I would say a majority of the people that are my buyers coming in, and they're not technically my clients. They can be in certain things with agency, and we don't want to get into that. But I want them to be my sellers someday. I want to be fair and honest with them. I want everybody. It's a long-term business. And so I don't try to go one way too much or the other. You know, I have to do my fiduciary duties, but I want the buyer to have a fair chance too, you know, and the seller, they have to sign off and do all that stuff. So I advise them, say, this is a good deal for both. We're going to get this thing done. You can earn a little money. They can earn a little money. Now, honestly, I haven't done an earnout yet. They can get a little. I haven't done one yet, but I have a $4 million listing, a meat market butcher, and they just put $1 million into their business for jerky. So it really hasn't materialized yet. Well, they put a big addition on their building and this whole thing, and it's a very successful business. But it's not fair for them to put $1 million in and get no money out of that. And they need to sell or want to sell for certain reasons. We don't need to go into that, but so this is a classic earnout situation. So this is how we're going to more than likely structure this business. They'll pay historical EBITDA for the existing business, and then we're going to do, and that, the big thing now, I'm working with the SBA. Will they allow that? And I think we've got it where if we can base cash flow off the original existing business, that's used to pay SBA loan, and they consider this new addition kind of ancillary or separate. And that's where we're going to base the earnout, just on additional money coming in from that division only. And I think I can get it SBA approved that way. So it's win-win with, you can get it financed. The seller is going to get what they want. Hopefully that's the one where the seller will stay on, because they don't want to risk some behind the ears type, whip behind the ears person. And no, I want to make sure I'm getting my $1 million, you know? And so he's going to require himself to be the main salesperson on that. Then everybody wins. Hopefully he gets his $1 million extra. They get their $4 million. I make a huge commission, and life is great. You know, yeah. Yeah. I do. So unlike, I came from the restaurant and hotel world traditionally. I was a Subway franchisee for years and things like that. I told you, man, I've signed dozens of these things. And we've, in the hotel world, all flagged. You know what I mean? Typically, my dad started his own chain way back in the 70s, but since then it's all flagged. Flag is, we use that as, oh yeah, good point. I'm using all these kind of terms. That means like franchised. You have a brand, like a Holiday Inn Express or Hampton Inn and Suites. Yeah, in that world, we call them flags. You know, so you want to own a flag. Lenders love that because there's a structure, there's a reservation system, there's a loyalty system. It's a lot easier to get a loan. A lot of times they will not lend on a non-franchised property. Only certain lenders will do that, maybe for independents and stuff. So, to get back, okay, so I just lost my train of thought. Where were we at?
First choice, geography.
Geography, thank you. In that world, very delineated market. So like, here's your pinpoint location. You have a 2-mile radius, or you have a 5-mile, or you have even like a 5-mile radius from this address.
Wow.
Very delineated. So like, if I own a Subway, in my agreement, except for corporate, because they'd throw them into, Walmarts and everything, they couldn't put another Subway within like 5 miles.
Sure.
Business, there is a point to this. Business brokerage is a little different. It's zip codes.
Okay.
But this is a different industry. So what, like I own the Scottsdale market legally, within First Choice Business Brokers world, but we don't have any franchisees in Tucson. So if I get a listing in Tucson, who cares? There's nobody there's nobody to compete with. Now, and let's say you're my best friend and you literally are in an office building right next door to a guy that owns a territory. Well, you're not going to list with that guy. You're going to list with me, even though you're not in my territory.
Right.
So there are these exceptions that kind of go where this would be really bad. Like if you're marketing like in someone else's like subway territory, you're in direct violation of your franchise agreement and you can get in big trouble. This world's a little murkier, I guess is what I'm saying. We try to respect that we only, like if it's Meta or Google, go into the zip codes that we're licensed to do for advertising. However, those ads leak. You know what I mean? Or you might, it doesn't just stop, right on the deal. So you do get ads that leak. I get them leaking into New Jersey and play. I don't even know how I get over there sometimes. They find them, so it's not an exact science, but we try to do the best we can, just, for the sake, because I don't want them doing that to me either.
Well, and you've got the zip code of where the business owner lives.
Yeah.
You've got the zip code of where the business is, right? So it's not a perfect geography.
And the area codes almost are never 480 or 602.
Is that right?
Yeah, almost. I mean, I get ones, I came from Pennsylvania, but I've been here 10 years. You know what I mean? So then I'm wondering, God darn it, my ad's leaking bad. I call them. No, I've been in Phoenix, whatever. So it's just weird. So you just have to call them. You got to know, and you hope that it's in your territory and it's working.
First Choice. How big is First Choice? How many? Do they have a lot of branches?
Yeah, about 80 offices now.
80 offices.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so they didn't grow on purpose probably for a long time. It's still the founding couple is still there. They're the most amazing people in the world. They're out of Las Vegas. They're still very involved with the business. And I'd say this past 3 years, maybe, they've really made a push to bring in some more, we're franchisees, in it. But we're also, it's interesting because we all have to be, most are licensure states. Okay. So I need a real estate broker license to do what I do in the 3 states I operate, North Dakota, Minnesota, and Arizona. Okay. So it's not like you can just do it. You have to be qualified to do it too.
Do you see a lot of roll-ups now? For those who don't know, a roll-up is buying a bunch of similar like businesses and then putting them all together and making it a regional play or a national play?
I do. I've got I just got a call. I'm working with a buyer out of Italy, believe it or not. And I've got a seller in the Fargo area that they created just an amazing 25 kilowatt turbine, like a wind turbine system. Okay. And they have spent, well north of $10 million getting this thing going, approved the whole thing. And then in 2018, I think when all those credits expired, and they had a really bad experience with like a middleman doing this, like legally, like criminal stuff. It just killed them. You know what I mean? And so they kind of shuttered it and kept all the assets, but it's still there. So the roll-up that I'm getting at, this would be a perfect type. You're not just going to be some Tom, Dick, and Harry and say, I'm going to do my own 25 kilowatt. They're big. These are big machines. You need to roll that up maybe with another engineering product or something. So you almost are going to want to have your own kind of engineering or warehouse or something, have a little expertise in something else. That would be a perfect kind of bolt-on or roll-up.
I've seen it a lot, like in dentists. I met a guy a few months ago. He's been buying dentistries across the United States.
That's been fascinating.
Another guy, plumbing. I've heard about plumbing. There are some companies actually rolling up plumbing companies regionally and nationally. We've had our experience in e-commerce where they tried to do this and it just didn't work out, right? Because they were so unique. Each business, each brand is so different. And a lot of the people that bought them struggled to aggregate them together. But I do think there are some businesses, car washes are an easy example, right?
Those would be easy to run. This dental thing really is interesting. In just a couple seconds, these DSOs, they call them, the dental service organizations, are buying them up. Yep. And it's run like a machine factory. So these dentists, and I deal with them, they're like, oh my God, I get this huge payday. Well, no, you really don't, because you have to hit all these metrics with these DSOs. Yes, you'll probably make more than just selling it to another dentist, outright. But what they put you through can be pretty ominous. And depending on your point in your life, are you kind of looking to retire? Maybe you're, whatever, in your 40s, you're like, okay, no big deal. I can work another 20 years and I can make these metrics. Yeah, maybe you can make them. But I'm always a little reluctant too. Do I want to be a dentist that's only there because you have to hit certain procedures and so forth? Sure. Or do I want to go an independent? I mean, that's up to you. And I don't know if you can you could tell by the name typically, but I don't know. But to me, there's a little bit of I don't know if it's an ethical issue, but to me, the independent dentist might have your best interest, versus like a corp or a dentist that has to hit certain thresholds to make a payment, to make a bonus, like a big one.
So I want to get into the marketing piece of this.
Yep.
How do you market as a business broker to people that are looking to sell and to buy?
Yep.
How do you market that?
Yeah, it's I've had some stuff that works, doesn't work. So I'll just kind of give you in general, because every market's just a little different.
Okay.
But there are a lot of commonalities too between it. So when we first sign up at First Choice Business Brokers, part of our franchise fee, and it really isn't technically, but part of what you pay goes into your first 6 months of marketing.
Okay.
So what they'll do is they'll set you up with Google search. And that's very effective, but it's gotten a little bit more expensive. And you know how that works. It's who is ever bidding. So it's just a market day by day thing. Yep. We do like a lot of like Meta ads. So we'll do like Facebook and Instagram. We tend to not get as quality listings there. So we have created what we call a funnel. And what we'll do is we'll get them, because like if you already have your information pre-populated in these apps.
Yep.
And I call them kind of drunk dials. You know what I mean? They might have 3 bottles of wine in them, and they hit my ad.
Okay.
I call them the next day, and they're like, "Who are you? What do you know
I
what
don't
I mean?
remember you.
I don't remember you." Well, that's because you're probably 3 bottles deep last night. So we've created a funnel system where they have to actually answer a few questions. And we have found obviously that those that take the time and actually book an appointment on my calendar are probably 10 times as likely to be a good selling candidate. So we've done that. I call them all, but they're better if they do it that way. And so we do, so we got the 2 of those. Just simple like postcard mailers.
Okay.
Like you can go, it's amazing. You can get like do a zip code. You can even break it down by like revenues, employees, things like that. So you can just kind of get around your office, whatever, do that. Just personal stuff. Yeah. So like what I'll do is I just hired 2 agents here in Arizona.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to get them, because I'll be the lead guy with the Google and the Meta, because it doesn't do any good us competing each other for the same ads. Let me do that, and I'll give you a few free ones to get started, and then after that, I might charge you for my time and effort and money for that. But go wear your shoe leather out. We have a little system, like we just call them like drop-off letters.
Yep.
So it'll say, hey, you put it in a sealed envelope, and it says personal and confidential to the business owner.
Yep.
And you go to someone, hey, is the owner in? No, he's not in. I said, okay, this is a friendly call, and I do it all the time. Would you mind giving this to the owner? And what it says in there, hey, owner, if I had a buyer for you today,
would you sell
at a price that you want, would you be willing to sell? And if not, keep my letter or my card and call me later. And it's amazing. I get a lot of responses out of that. And referral sources, financial planners, CPAs, trust attorneys, any of those people are going to be good leads. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So it's not cheap. I mean, and just your ads that you put out, like Biz Buy Sell and different things, I probably spend just in my little firm, I don't know, $3-4 grand a month, on marketing.
Just to get out there. I didn't hear TikTok.
I haven't done TikTok.
Okay.
I'm not saying maybe that isn't good. Kind of the guy that we work with, we've just never done it, but
it feels like a great educational opportunity as more and more people are getting on it, especially older people that are more mature with businesses, and not that young people don't have that, but more and more are getting on there. I'll give you one example that I saw that really kind of proved the point for me. I'm a user. I think it's a great algorithm. I learn a ton on there. I follow it and and then it just narrows down to what I want to see. There's a guy on there. I think he's called the jet guy or the business jet guy. So he went on there like a year and a half ago, just talking about the process of buying and selling private jets. Just educational.
Yep.
Here's how the operating costs. Here's how it works. He got a call like a month or 2 later. It's like, hey, I want to buy a $20 million jet.
Yeah.
I mean, people thought, well, it's just kids dancing, right? Well, now the guy's selling $20 million jets because of TikTok, and the guy found him on TikTok. So I do believe that it's so interesting how it's starting to evolve, social media aspect, because now I talked to a woman the other day. She's marketing it because people are using TikTok to search, to solve problems.
Okay.
Like, how do I sell my business? And they're going to TikTok as a search engine now, which is relatively new. And it's really starting to take off recently.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I'll bring that up to a guy we work with. He's kind of our marketing expert. And I know he's probably thought of it, because I think I mentioned to you earlier, we have just now started a national campaign.
Yeah.
And so we're putting a little extra money, every office but it's more educational at this point.
I think it should be.
Yeah, because at some point it'll go to lead gen or lead generation, at some point. But we want to educate, because a lot of people don't even know what a business broker is.
It's a long-term game.
It's a long-term game. And so we need to know, because if they think of one, unfortunately, they think of like Transworld or Sunbelt. Those are probably our biggest competitors. Or Murphy Business, those are the ones that we kind of come up against. And we just want to say, hey, what are we?
Yeah.
Why do we do what we do, and why are we different, or how are we different? And if you are considering selling, well, then maybe, like in the ad game, back especially with Subway and stuff, it was always like top of mind awareness, aided, unaided awareness. We do all these tests. Well, like places like McDonald's always gets the best unaided awareness for a restaurant, for instance. Subway was always in the second or third, two, whatever. But if you just say someone, or if you just go to someone and say, name me 5 business brokers, I bet you 99% couldn't name 5 business brokers. Brands.
No chance.
Nobody can. No chance.
I am in this
You're
space.
in the business and you can't do it.
And I can name a couple in my space, like maybe 3 in e-com.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it. So what a huge opportunity to educate people.
Yes.
First of all, what we are, if everybody gets a little bit, the rising tide will raise all the boats. That's fine. So we're considering that. We're considering with all the markets that we're in, all of our offices. What are we? What do we do? Why do we have an existence? Why do you need us?
It's interesting. There was a guy out of Minnesota actually who came into the e-commerce space, and he started advocating to sellers like, hey, if you want to sell in the future, let me help you. Like what we talked about earlier, let me help you get your financials in line.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah, he did a retainer and then charged a percentage of the sale, and I thought it was really smart because it was like, hey, you don't know anything about this. And when I sold the last business I sold in 21, I started a year beforehand. Started thinking about it.
We try to get these guys or gals 3 years ahead of time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and just say, they'll call me and they're like, hey man, your financials really aren't good. You're making no money.
Right.
So your business is worth 0.
Right.
But I'm here for the long term. Let's start planning today. Getting quality earnings, recurring earnings.
Yes.
If you can get contracts, people love contracts. Get your EBITDA up. Get all your personal expenses out of there. Make that EBITDA really solid. No personal, one owner's salary, that's okay. We can do that. But if your kid's college education and your car, get rid of all that crap.
Yeah.
It just dirties the water, muddies the water. So I love that. I'm okay. They almost always call. You know what I mean? I'm never pushy. I give them my advice. I help them out. They call me back.
It feels like there's a real opportunity for a consultancy or an advisor basis for these companies and charging appropriately.
Yeah.
And a retainer, maybe it's a few grand a month. And it's like, hey, listen, I'm going to help you situate yourself so that when you go to sell, you're going to be sellable. You're going to sell at a higher multiple. You're going to sell faster.
They do exist.
They do. Yeah, they've got to be.
Some do because I use them as referral sources on some of them.
Okay.
And they do sell a product. It's like called, it's a score.
Okay.
And I just saw it. God darn it, I can't remember what it is. But you're right, they do exist.
That's a
they're like
huge
financial
need.
planners, you know what I mean?
Super smart.
They get you early, they give you a score.
Yep.
And they work for you the next 3 years and they hand them off to me.
Love it.
Yeah. So that does exist. And
Okay.
it's maybe 10, 15 grand a year or something, but it's worth it.
Oh, every penny.
Yeah. If you get another million or two out of it.
It's worth every penny.
Good
And
Lord,
I always say this all the time, but don't trip over dollars, pick up pennies.
I love that.
And this is a key one
I use
right
the
here.
nickel, but it's the same.
Yeah, don't do it. It's just silly, right? And people get short-sighted on it. And so I think a lot of it's funny because it comes down to like counseling almost. Like it's like let's get your mindset correct. Let's get your financials correct. And then when you're ready to do this in most cases, it's the biggest financial windfall anybody's ever had in their life.
Almost, yeah, short of like if you're not in business, your house is typically your biggest asset. This in their lives, 90%, this is their biggest asset.
For sure.
By far, nothing even close.
Yes.
And so, yes, it's kind of crazy. Some don't even have financial statements.
Right.
I have a business that was doing $3 million a year. They do an annual tax return. I'm like, don't you monitor? I mean, even weekly or monthly? No, we have no idea. We just kind of fly by the seat of our pants.
No KPIs.
Nothing. 33-year business.
Yeah.
But somehow they made it, but I think they could have been better if they would have been following this stuff.
See, as a buyer, I love
because their margins are, they could be doing better.
See, as a buyer, that's the kind of stuff I love.
Because you have huge upside.
Now I can go fix stuff.
Yeah.
I can go make it better. And that's what we look for is like, all right, maybe they're not operating optimally. I need them to run suboptimally so that we can come in and make some improvements.
100%. Like being in the hotel world, I'm still a hospitality broker too.
Okay.
Did a couple deals. My dad still owns a Candlewood Suites in Fargo.
Okay.
And I run that, and we're probably going to transact in that in 25. He and his partner in their 80s. It's probably time. We'll do it on our own terms instead of a weird death situation.
Sure.
But it's, so it's interesting because, and I got started that business a little off topic too, that being a business broker, I wasn't officially one, but dealing with hotels, you kind of are anyway.
Okay.
Because you're spreading a business and you're spreading all this numbers and you're doing all that stuff. And at any rate, I got kind of off topic there. But
no, this is great. So I think you've got two reasons people might reach out to you. One, if you're in the North Dakota or Minnesota area and are going to be a caregiver for somebody, where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, go to rightathome.net
Rightathome.net
/Fargo.
/Fargo. Perfect.
And they hit careers, and that's where you can go because we need good people. I just want people with a heart. I don't care
That's
if you have
great.
experience or not.
Hard to test for.
It's hard because you can train, but you can't train attitudes and
100% agree
feelings.
with that.
Yeah.
And then First Choice Business Brokers, you're licensed in North Dakota, Minnesota, and Arizona.
Correct.
So if you've got a business that you want to sell or want to buy a business in one of those 3 states, how do they find you there?
Go to, probably the best way is just go to, I have 2 websites. So either it's probably northdakota.fcbb.com for First Choice Business Brokers, like Frank Charles Bravo.com. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. And it's got all my personal information and all that stuff. The best way to get, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you one marketing advice.
Yep.
Come up with a better domain that you redirect to wherever you want it to go for all 3 states.
And some do that. And
Okay.
I probably need to do that. Like sell your business Scottsdale or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Sellyourbusiness.com. I would even go around the educational piece.
Yeah.
And then that redirects to wherever you want it to go. It'll
Some
be a little-
offices do that, and that's great because, and I actually do that. So Fargo Home Care is my vanity
Okay.
up north. So maybe that's even better. You go to Fargo Home Care.
Easy to remember.
Yeah, that'll get you to where you need to be. I'm just so used to not using that lately, but fargohomecare.com or that rightathome.net.
Well, thanks for coming in. And I think a
Likewise,
lot of
Rob.
people are going to learn a lot about this, especially terminology and then mindset and how to think about things. So I really appreciate the conversation.
I appreciate you inviting me. I've had a great time.
All right. Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, you're welcome, Rob.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with friends. And if you're an entrepreneur interested in coming on the show, visit therobgreenshow.com to get in touch. Stay curious and never stop learning, improving, or growing.